Hey, what's up? Hello and welcome to Up at Noon, live at 5, or Up at 5, live at noon, whatever you want to call it. I'm Brian
It
Altano.
doesn't make
That's
it's
my best
nonsense.
friend over there. That's Max Scoville right over there, or
Hey, what's
right
up?
that side. Can we do, let's do
It's
a,
how does it it goes over? No, it's
yeah,
just, it.
there.
Ugh.
Your hand is huge. Get out of here. Um,
Oh, that's weird. I don't like that. Oh, that's awful. Look at that. Oh
oh, yeah.
no.
Hold on. Here we
Oh,
go.
oh.
This is what you've been
High
waiting for, folks.
high
This is
five.
this is the TV of the future right here.
Pep.
Up at Noon is your weekly comedy variety show right here on IGN, where we catch all the news that our big brothers and sisters over doing at IGN doing real jobs didn't want to touch because they're not, honestly, they're just not skilled enough to handle the stupidity that we
Yeah,
want to throw your way for the next hour.
they're not professionals like us. We're the pros. That's what
Yeah.
it's short for professional, the pros.
They're not
But we
bad enough.
Yeah, no, we're a couple bad dudes. We're going to talk about all the nonsense. Yeah, let's be straightforward. It's been a weird week. We had sort of, because of I guess holiday schedules and whatnot, we had like a short week, which I guess when you're a grown up means you got to cram your normal 5-day nonsense into 4 days, which is kind of like, squeezing into tight pants after a big Christmas ham. And so we had a lot of stuff to take care of, and we're all prepping for Summer of Gaming, which is IGN's big, huge online event filling the absence of physical events that are happening over the next few months. So, previously in summertime, there would be like a summer video game event that would be like maybe a week. And now it has been spread across 3 weeks and counting, and we are figuring out how to handle that. But that's all kicking off next week. We got word today that the Sony's finally going to reveal the PlayStation 5 stuff on the 4th, which is what, Thursday, Wednesday, something like that. But that'll be exciting. It'll be good. And then we're going to be doing a whole bunch of stuff past that. If you want to know more about that, go check that out. We are working very hard on that. I know that we joke about being professionals, but we do actually, apply ourselves sometimes. But that will not be happening for the next hour because we're going to goof around.
That's right. On top of that, the other thing that's been keeping us insanely busy is that next Friday, I'm hosting basically with IGN's Terry Schwartz, what basically amounts to the Animal Crossing version of MTV Cribs. Where I will go to various celebrities and influencers and people of specials to their islands and run around their homes and interview them about how they made their places. And as a fan of one particular episode of MTV Cribs, which is the episode of MTV Cribs where they went to Redman's house, I can say that I found the Redman of Animal Crossing, and I went to his house, and he has a million Twitter followers, and I'm very excited to share that one because that's going to be a really good one. So that's next week. That'll be about 4 hours long. Tons of people involved, so go check that out. Also, many of you love dogs, and you also love Ryan Gosling. Now, what if we told you they were making a movie where Ryan Gosling became a dog, but was also a man? That's right. I'm talking about the Wolfman. Take it away, Max.
Yeah. Okay, I guess we're talking about that. Yeah, so this got announced like right before the show started, but Universal, they went through that big, huge thing where they were like, prepare yourself for the dark universe, and they made that Tom Cruise Mummy movie that was like setting up basically the Avengers of movie monsters, and then they just pulled the plug and nothing happened with that. They're doing that again, but at a different approach, which I'm actually kind of into, where they've been doing sort of just standalone modern interpretations of Universal monsters. There was the Invisible Man recently, which Brian, you did a commentary with Lee Whannell, the director of that.
Yeah, the director. That movie cost $7 million to make and made like well over $100-something million. So this pared down version of taking sort of like hyper focusing on one classic movie monster, instead of doing that thing they did when they teased the Dark Universe a few years ago, which is taking a bunch of actors and putting them in just like nice suits, like for a GQ cover, and then being like they're monsters, but then never doing anything with it. This is a much better approach.
This is the opposite of that, where I think they're giving a lot of younger directors a chance to kind of play around in a sort of classic horror sandbox. But yeah, no, I feel like making a movie of the Invisible Man is theoretically going to be cheaper than making a movie of the Wolfman, because whereas the Invisible Man is just not there, the Wolfman has to look somewhat like a lycanthrope. So you've got to make Ryan Gosling look like the Wolfman. I'm into this. I don't know who's attached to direct, but like, I swear you could just make Drive, but have him be a werewolf, and I would be fine with that. And then call it a day. Just Wolfman has the car, and he's good at car stuff. Why not?
Make Drive, but he's on top of the car the whole time, like in Teen Wolf.
It's perfect. Yes, I love it.
I saved everybody so much money.
Yeah, there. So we talked about we talked about the news. We talked about the most important, pressing, cutting-edge events. That's all 2 of them. The PlayStation 5 is coming, and then also Wolfman, starring Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, but this has actually been a gigantic week for video gamers and snack enthusiasts, in which you and I are both equal parts those things, especially since quarantine happened, because, oh boy, the snacks have definitely been up to here since this started. And we got word recently that a classic video game that was once connected to Serial is returning in HD. And to celebrate it, Max and I put together a video breaking down exactly what's going on, because Chex Quest has returned, and we're very excited. So let's take a look. Good morning from Brian and Max at IGN. I hope you're eating cereal and having a wonderful time watching cartoons, because we're here to celebrate Chex Quest.
Yeah, that's right. Chex Quest, the classic 1996 promotional Doom mod that was released as record-breakingly the first video game that came for free in a box of cereal. I think it's really funny that Chex, which has always been seen as a pretty mild-mannered breakfast cereal, not too sugary, not really crazy in the cartoon mascot department, decided to just drop a Doom mod into a box of cereal boxes in the 90s. They remastered it, just like every other great video game from the 90s is getting massive remakes and overhauls. We got a brand new version of Chex Quest, which is actually free now on Steam. So, what do you even make of that?
Yeah, right? What a time to be alive. So Chex Quest is a really interesting game, because I think as kids, video games were really expensive, because when you're a kid, like $50 or $60 is like $5,000. It's basically impossible to get. And asking your parents for money to get a video game, especially like a first-person shooter, especially like a Doom mod, that's kind of a struggle, right? Like, it's very tough to have that conversation. That said, getting cereal as a kid is easy. You're in the store, you reach your hand out, you put it in the cart, and you're done. Sometimes your parents don't notice until they pay for it, especially something like Chex cereal, which is, vaguely healthy looking. Definitely it's not packed with marshmallows. It doesn't have cartoon mascots all over it. So yeah, in 1996, they glued a PC CD-ROM to the box, and kids all over the place got a free video game, which went on to be this like massive cult hit, and kids were playing it everywhere, and they loved it. And I think some of them knew they were playing like basically like a serial version of Doom, but others didn't really get it.
What's crazy is that like it's not like they took bits and pieces of Doom and they were like, we'll try to make our own game. They just reskinned Doom with cereal. Like it's such a completely ridiculous concept that I'm happy it gained cult status. I was looking into it. There have been a few Chex Quest remakes over the years. There were the last one was I think Chex Quest 3 in 2008, but this one is like a full complete overhaul. And the weirdest part of all, in the same way that cereal box prizes have kind of gone the way of the dinosaur, we were seeing the waning age of physical video games, but this is still getting a physical release.
Yeah, that's right. So Limited Run Games, who's been doing a lot of like really awesome physical editions of predominantly indie digital games, or even retro games that have been long since out of print, sort of teamed up with the people behind Chex Quest for the remaster, which is an HD version of the original game that came with Serial. So you can get the game for free, but if you want a physical version of the game, which comes with all sorts of like cool goodies, Limited Run Games is selling it right now. It is currently sold out, but they could make it a less than limited run and do another run of it. So
they sent us this weird sort of care package of a bunch of sort of odd swag here, which I love because it feels like relics from a non-existent timeline. Like here's a clamshell VHS tape. That's actually, this is used. This has like a sticker on it, but it's a fake VHS movie of if Chex Quest was a real show back in the 90s, which it never was. Yep. And this is where it gets weird. You open it up, there's a fake VHS tape in here. And also, like, I want to say, like, they didn't pay us or sponsor us. They just sent us a bunch of weird crap, and we wanted to make a video about it.
Looks like the check's cleared, Max.
Hey!
Yeah, they also sent over this NES box, which is, it looks like an old school NES box. It has a fake sort of price tag on it for 1996, which was the year the game came out. And when you open that up, there's a full-on cart inside, which is even more insane. It says limited run on it because this game, I don't think, well, no, I know for sure, never, ever, ever could have been able to run on the NES. This was a Doom mod, Ultimate Doom specifically. So it's just a cute little thing to put it on the NES cart. It even says Chex Mix on the back in small font. But yeah, so right now you can get the game for free. There are a bunch of different characters in the game, and to get a secret ending in the game, you have to beat the game with all those characters. And one way to get those characters is to buy Chex Mix, the actual snack, which I've been inhaling.
Yeah, no, and, I would have a big. I would have a bag of the bold party mix here, but I am bold and I love to party, and so I ate the whole thing this last weekend because
it happens. We're in COVID-19 quarantine, man. This is the perfect time.
Yeah, no, you're stuck inside. What else are you gonna do but get nostalgic, regress, eat carbs, and play video games? It's a
precious.
So anyway, there's codes on the back. Maybe you can see mine. If you can, it's all yours. Those help you unlock characters in the game. There's 6 different characters in the game, and you can get 100% of the game and the special ending by beating them all. Lots of great characters, such as Dr. Orion, who is basically the rye bread, and then there's Fred Chexter, the protagonist.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Rye bread?
Wheatney Chexworth, who is the female protagonist, and then we also have Pretzel.
I didn't know that was supposed to be rye bread. I've just been calling those things brown things.
And there's also
give me one of those circles. That's what I thought those were. Oh boy!
I want to point out that Doom obviously is a violent first-person shooter where you go to hell and you fight bloody beasts and monsters and you chainsaw and stuff like that. This game doesn't have that, but it is a first-person shooter where you walk around with a spoon that you then dig into these creatures called phlemoids, which are intergalactic space aliens from another dimension that are here to eat snacks, and they look like mucus, which honestly feels like something from Doom anyway. Like digging a metal spoon into this thing, it's pretty doomy. Yeah, so there's some slime.
Look at this. They sent me a phlemoid.
Don't eat it.
It's.
I bet if you put your finger in it, it'll make a fart noise.
Ooh.
Gross.
Brian, remember Chex Quest? Well, it's back in POG form.
So yeah, we just want to celebrate Chex Quest because that is it's been it's honestly like developed a really awesome following over the years. And I think it's really cool that cereal not only used to come with toys and prizes, but at one point cereal came with video games. Every now and then I still walk through the cereal aisle as an old man in my 30s, and I still look to see if there's any toys, and there usually aren't. But every now and then you'll see a digital code for a video game, or it's usually like a mobile game or something like that. But yeah, let's celebrate the time when Chex gave out free video games with their cereal. And to celebrate that, head on over to Steam and download Chex Quest HD for free and go shoot those disgusting phlemoids or hit them with the spoon.
It's got multiplayer.
It does have multiplayer.
It could be an esport. Dude, they said, I didn't realize this. It took me a second. I'm so old that I was like, what is this, like a challenge coin? They sent me a slammer to go with the pogs.
Yeah! Chex Quest. It's out there. Don't eat the game. You can eat the mix and the cereal, but don't eat the game. You'll get hurt. Thanks for watching.
Chex Quest, still free, now in HD. Join the Chex Mix Squadron today.
And we're back.
Here it is.
How you doing?
Here it's us. We're doing it. We're all right. Yeah, no, we're just checking in with the chat on the little break there. Somebody was just spamming Robux. They just kept writing the word Robux. Don't do that. Don't write Robux repeatedly in the chat. Nobody wants that. We did get a request for something special, which was a nice visit from America's #1 dog, my dog, Peppers. Let's see what this little rat is up to. Let's switch over to the dog cam.
Max, it's been a few weeks. Wow, he looks different.
There he is. There's that dog.
There he is. There he is. Uh-oh.
I think he either ate poison or he is chronically depressed or I just woke him up from a nap. I'm not sure which.
Why not all three?
Peppers.
Hi, Peppy.
Pepe.
Hi, Pepino.
There he
What
is.
do I call him? I always call him dumb names. I call him.
You call him Papyrus, like the Avatar font. I love how he looks like he's in like a scary ass music video. Look at this new metal dog.
Call him Papyrus. Pepino, Petrus Farms, PP, Peeps Lots.
Pepperidge, Papucho. Yeah, no, we got it's a good. He's a good dog for making up nonsense names.
Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed our Chex Quest video. That's been a really fun one, and like on a personal level, man, I've been eating a lot of Chex Mix. That's not a sponsored thing. They didn't pay me to say that. I would actually pay money myself to buy more Chex Mix, but I've gone to a bunch of stores in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they don't really sell them here because I think like the thing about to go on a rant real quick. The thing about buying snacks in San Francisco is sometimes you just want trash, and it's really hard to do in like this very sort of like eco-conscious, conflict-free, gluten-free city, where all we really have here is Mr. Pirate Booty's airplane fart cheddar.
Yeah. No, it'll garbage. Be like like
sometimes
like
you just
roots,
want some Chex
like quinoa clusters or something.
Yeah, it'll be like President Sexual Bear's slide of erotic fake cheese.
Yeah,
no,
you gotta have some good nonsense there.
Sometimes I just want a good brunch,
Yeah, I got in a spat with my wife because she was at the store for some stuff, and she got she came back with a box of like Cheez-It mix, like Cheez-It party mix, which is fine, but like, come on, that's like just play to your strengths, like just don't go with the shirt thing. Anyway,
no, that's Cheez-It party mix is Cheez-It trying to do a Chex Mix, and they can't hang.
It's fine. I mean,
you come, just.
No, it's a good snack mix.
You best not miss. Max, you got a dedicated streaming service named after you this week that launched entirely in your favor. What a wonderful time. HBO Max just came out, and there's been a lot of confusion over what HBO Max is, and having used it for a few days now, I still can't exactly tell you. I can tell you it's sort of like a Pokemon evolution of HBO Go and HBO Now.
I have a question. How do you watch it?
Oh, IGN has an article about that, so you should check that out.
I don't want to read IGN. I want you to answer the question. How do you watch? Do you watch it on Roku TV or like a?
No. So okay, let's get into it. They launched without any Roku apps, so you can download it on your PS4, which is opposite of what usually happens with these things. So there's a PS4 app for HBO Max, and to find it, you have to open HBO Now, and then it like goes to sleep and then wakes up like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly and becomes HBO Max, which is now purple, but still mostly just the regular same HBO.
That sounds exciting, actually. That sounds like a fun transform. That sounds like doing like scratchers or like one of those like grow the dinosaur. You put it in the water and it gets large, or like those like fizzy things that have a prize inside.
Yes, you'll get to the bottom of it. You have a whole weekend ahead of you. I think you'll find plenty of time to figure that one out. Anyway, HBO Max just launched this week. There's a lot of confusion over what it is. It's got a ton of movies on it. It's got a ton of TV shows. It doesn't really have a lot of original content, but if you've ever dug into the sort of back catalog of something like Netflix or Amazon Prime or HBO, one of my favorite things about those services is that they sort of collate a lot of weird, old, crazy stuff that you may not really think to click on in 2020, but we're all inside more these days and we're all bored, and Max and I are big fans of horror movies, so we put together this list of the 10 best horror movies on HBO Max. Now, before you dive in to the comments and you tell me I'm wrong because I missed some big ones, I want to point out, yes, Alien is on there, Night of the Living Dead is on there, Jaws is on there, every single Friday the 13th is on there. There's tons of Hitchcock on there. There's just lots and lots of stuff. I feel like a lot of that is pretty top level. And if you like horror, hopefully you've seen it. Like if you haven't seen Pet Sematary by now, I mean, go watch it, right? Like it's on there. So we thought we'd dig into some of the sort of like slightly more slept on, slightly more obscure horror movies that have hit HBO Max. and are there for the picking right now, and will justify your subscription price. So let's get into it. In 1993, a movie came out called Kronos. Guillermo del Toro made it, and you might know him from, God, a ton of films. Most notably, recently he had his hand in the Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, like live action thing, which I think he sort of executive produced. Before that, he did Hellboy and a whole bunch of other stuff that was like vaguely horror tinged. And it's basically a story of a it's essentially the tale of somebody who wants to find immortality, and the only way they can do that is with this bizarre pendant that causes horrible things to go awry, such as essentially vampire-shaped things. And it is really gross and kind of crude, and it has some great creature effects and practical effects in it, and it also has Ron Perlman. So you should check that out. It's called Kronos.
Yeah, I mean, that's a Del Toro movie right there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In 1986, a movie called Critters came out, and the reason HBO Max is crushing it right now is not only do they have Critters, they have Critters 1, 2, 3, and 4. Here's the trailer for Critters. A thing about the trailer for Critters is that it doesn't have critters in it, which I think is fantastic. Critters are essentially like basketball-sized hairballs with teeth that tear people apart hyper-violently. And
there's one.
This was
there he is.
Yeah,
that's the man. He was right. He was in the. You saw his teeth. There's another one.
Yeah, you're not really. You don't really get to see the critters that much. But anyway, yeah, this is a weird ass movie. I really dig it. It's just they're just like these rolling hairballs that tear everything apart. This came out a few years around the same area as Gremlins. And I think they're pretty similar, but I don't think Critters have the same amount of rules. Also, it seems like a lot of times they're just like a basketball that somebody throws into a scene and they disappear. They're utter nonsense. I remember this VHS box art scaring the utter crap out of me when I was a kid. That and Ghoulies were like two of the scariest. Look at that logo. I love that so much. Yeah, it's an old school New Line cinema horror joint, and I really dig it. After that, you just heard me mention Gremlins. Gremlins is a classic movie. It's straight up horror. It's also a Christmas movie. I think it's like hyper violent and gritty and gross. Gremlins 2, though? Gremlins 2? Man, Gremlins 2 is really special because it does that great thing of like basically taking horror and comedy and putting them on equal playing fields. Gremlins 2 is absolutely bizarre. It is the closest thing I think we've ever gotten to, I would say, like a live action Looney Tunes movie.
Yeah, no, I mean, the thing about Gremlins too, and you bring this up a lot, but the argument is always like, is Die Hard a Christmas movie? Well, forget that. Is Gremlins 2 a Die Hard movie is the better question, which, yes, it is. Mm-hmm. It's all happening in one building. It's very video gamey.
Yeah, so essentially there is a TV studio in this massive building, and there is an outbreak of gremlins, which if you don't know about gremlins, they are basically this is hard to explain. They pivot from being these adorable little teddy bear, raccoon-shaped mogwai things.
What do you mean it's hard to explain?
It's
gremlins. Everyone, it's old gremlins.
No, because they start out really cute, and if they get wet or eat after midnight, they spruce balls from their back and turn into lizard men. That's hard to explain. I'm sorry.
All right, I guess fair. I guess. All right, give me something else. Everyone knows Gremlins. I like that you're like Critters. Okay. Also, give me an excuse to talk about Gremlins too.
I love Gremlins too. Go watch it. Next up, Crimson Peak. This is a really, really weird movie. Max, who directed this one again?
I think it was also Del Toro.
Yeah, it was Del Toro, right? Yeah, and so this one's really interesting because it's way more like just straight up horror, and it's got like incredible costumes, period piece, like lots and lots of great sort of like haunted house settings and stuff like that. Like I really love the eccentric old museum vibe of this movie.
I mean, it's definitely, I think period horror is a good way of looking at it. Like it's got all the sensibilities and trappings of like something like, you know, I don't know, like a Jane Austen book or, you know, Little Women or something, but it's got ghosts and stuff in it too. Like it's definitely creepy, but it's I would say almost like, you know, not steampunk, but it's I don't know, it's odd because it's committed to both of these things equally, where it's just as easy to watch it as sort of like an old timey, foofy romance as it is to watch it as like a like a straight ghost film. It's gorgeous. The coloring in it's really interesting, where I think they were trying to go for something, this sort of like almost like 70s aesthetic in terms of like very odd, like a lot of colored gels, a lot of like very vivid colors for something that is mostly very dark.
Yeah, I totally agree. And this is obviously like, you get to see Del Toro play with like a much more of a budget here. I think it's pretty slept on in terms of like his films, and that's on HBO Max. So go watch that. That is called Crimson Peak. Up next, Ready or Not, I would say is probably one of the most slept on movies of 2019. I feel like this one kind of came and went. Like this is a decent sized budget movie. It's got a really great cast, and it is about a woman who marries into a rich family full of some of the worst people in the world. I don't think we're actually looking at it right now. I don't know which trailer this is.
Is that it?
No.
I think I was Ready or Not. Was it? I think it was, dude.
I thought it was it?
Yeah, look at that. There's a logo.
Oh,
yeah.
it is. There it is. Okay, yeah. And so, so she marries into this rich family, and they basically have this ritual to survive your first night before getting married, which is like a game of hide and seek. And that game of hide and seek turns out to be this like deadly game where everyone in the family turns on you and tries to kill you in this like ultra campy, ultra violent death run through this gigantic mansion that has all sorts of like hiding places, nooks and crannies. This movie has some of my favorite sort of like surprise deaths, just like basically a character walk into a room and something horrible will happen to them immediately. I love it.
It's also like it's equal parts like stupid and like smart. Like it knows when it's doing something stupid and it completely leans into it, and then other times it's just sort of like, let's think around this, let's do the unexpected. So it does a good job of kind of playing with the trope, and I feel like it's akin to Get Out, but totally like so much dumber and like more fluffy, and like it's not really trying to have any kind of serious message. It's just kind of like, well, rich people sure are crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And next up is Scanners, which came out in 1991. Max, you want to talk about this one? This is a weird movie.
It's David Cronenberg. He doesn't make not weird movies. This is about a secret society of telekinetic people who can make each other's heads explode. I think my first exposure to this movie was aside from that animated GIF of somebody's head exploding, was also that Will Ferrell sketch with Jim Carrey, where it's like Jimmy Tanner's Fat Burners, where he's just like covers himself with like a heated suit. Like that's not helpful if you haven't seen that, but he just goes like, "Scan me," and they just go, "Arr!" And they're just like staring at each other, and then one of them I think passes out. But it's people who can just be like, Didn't South Park do a thing with that too, where it was just people being like, yeah. So it's very cliche in a lot of ways, but it's that level of like, I feel like it's that gross version of telekinesis where you get a nosebleed afterwards, but in this case they're just making each other's heads explode. Cronenberg, what a treat. Next up, Coyote Lake came out in 2019. Very slept on indie film. I really dig this one. It's about like a mother and daughter team that they're drug dealers, and they basically bring people into their house to sell them drugs and then like drug them and kill them. And these two drug dealers show up and get out and basically convince the daughter she needs to get out too. And so like, it's one of those films where you don't really trust anybody, and everything feels horrible and hopeless, but goes into some really interesting places. I don't really want to say more about this one because I think you should. Yeah, say no more. That's Coyote Lake, came out last year. It's on HBO Max right now. Next up, the oldest movie on this list is Ugetsu. And this is a movie that came out in 1953. It's one of the oldest like ghost movies I've ever seen. It's also like, there's something interesting about watching a movie this old that's about ghosts that makes it almost sort of feel real. It's about a peasant farmer and a potter who leaves his wife and young son and become haunted for basically their horrible actions. And it just goes in some really, really weird, dark places. And it's kind of a slow burn, but I suggest you watch this. I know a lot of people don't like watching old black and white movies, and they don't like watching movies with subtitles. Just
bite the bullet for an hour and change, and sit down and watch this weird movie. You get to see that woman do butter churning, which is the most terrifying sport. Up next, 1977 brought us a movie called House, far and away the weirdest movie on this list, hands down. Max, take it away.
So this was, I think I read a thing about this where the Japanese producer who made it basically was like, they wanted to make a Star Wars. They wanted to make like just a production that would just be blow everyone away. And his solution for that was to be like, I think he looked at his daughter and he was like, what kind of a movie do you want to see? And the result is like absolutely, completely bonkers. It is, and I don't use this term lightly, it is very much like a live action anime. Mm-hmm. It has a group of Japanese schoolgirls who all have like weird nicknames, go off into the woods, and then wind up getting tangled up with this bizarre haunted house that is trying to kill them. And then periodically, it'll just have like some of the most psychedelic and imaginative special effects you will ever see in a movie. This is not one of that's just a head. That's pretty cool. But there's some like really, really weird stuff that happens in this movie. I wouldn't call it straight horror exactly. Like it's definitely creepy, but it's got like, it's too weird to be like, I would almost put it in the same category as Labyrinth, where you're like, who would watch this? Like it's too scary for children, and it's, not scary enough for adults, and it's too unsettling for everybody. So what's the end result here? But that movie's fun as hell.
Yeah, go watch that. That's called House. And finally, The Frighteners, which is a movie I specifically remember seeing in theaters and really, really loving. This is Peter Jackson made this movie with Michael J. Fox. It is a movie about a guy who, after a tragedy, can communicate with dead people and is basically a little bit sleazy about it until something really bad happens and he's called upon to save the day. This movie is really interesting because it has like this incredible mix of practical effects and like late 90s special effects that somehow bizarrely hold up. I mean, Peter Jackson kind of knows what he's doing. Like there's a lot of like force ghosts in this movie and like Photoshop liquefy tool stuff happening, but for some odd reason it works.
I think they're just regular ghosts, dude. They're not force ghosts. They're not in Star Wars, man.
I mean, they look like force ghosts.
No, that's not surprising because Peter Jackson, like, he got to start making really goofy ass horror movies. Oh yeah, like Arlie Ermey's in that. I forgot about that. This was this was him like playing around with the budget before he did Lord of the Rings. I think this is one of the last films he made before he got involved with Lord of the Rings and did the whole Weta thing and founded them and just kind of blew it out of the water. But his earliest experiences with special effects were like Brain Dead and just like really like Bad Taste, which is about like aliens exploding and vomiting and stuff. It's nasty. He did like a lot of very strange, goofy B-movie special effects things before he started actually, playing around with the good stuff. I don't remember this movie at all. I think there was a point where this was my favorite movie, but I don't remember the late 90s that well.
No, there's a lot to unpack in this film. I think it's totally worth watching again. And I think that's like what streaming sites like HBO Max are great for, because you don't really feel pressured like you have to watch the latest and greatest best new movies. And there's honestly, frankly, like not a ton of original content that's brand new on there right now. So dig through the weird stuff, dig through the classics, and watch The Frighteners, House, Ugetsu, Coyote Lake, Scanners, Ready or Not, Crimson Peak, Gremlins 2, The New Batch, Critters, and Kronos. I think I got them all.
That was all of them, yeah. Yeah, and also, like, what are your favorite weird movies that we missed? My favorite movies are the ones that never come out. I like the idea of movies so much better than actual movies. And so often, some of the most interesting projects either wind up drastically different from the final product or wind up just kind of stuck in development hell. And one of those actually got sort of a trailer this week. This is definitely kind of a deep cut indie thing, but there's a director named Shane Carruth who made a couple of sort of critical darlings. One was called Upstream Color and one was called Primer. They are both incredibly sort of breathy, dreamy, really dense indie movies. And they're sort of science fiction, but not like the kind that I would say they're just as surreal as they are sci-fi. Like they're almost abstract, but there is like a, cohesive thread there to unpack. And a lot of people really love to just dig into that kind of, complex, dense storytelling. But he's had this script kicking around for a while for a movie called A Topiary, like a tree that's cut into the shape of a bird or whatever. And just recently, this is weird because also he said, Shane said that he's retiring from filmmaking because he's over it. He's pretty much quitting. The screenplay for this has been kicking around for ages. And at one point, he had Steven Soderbergh and David Fincher attached to produce, and it was going to be this massive, big budget, spectacular thing. But it didn't happen. It didn't materialize, and it's possibly because it's an inaccessible script.
Yeah, no, it's kind of like crazy insane, and it's also like I think he wrote this like long blog post last year detailing why he was just basically giving up on movies, and that's because of the amount of times that this one has come close to coming into fruition, only to collapse under the weight of its own ambition. And I guess that's got to be like utterly disheartening after a long time. I mean, that's probably worse than just having a box office bomb is not having a box office anything.
Yeah, but on the bright side, he dropped a trailer for it, which was basically it was like kind of a spec trailer. Like he'd show this to prospective investors. And the whole plot of the movie is about it's hard to even make sense of it reading the screenplay. I read it a few years ago. It didn't really stick with me except for this like one chunk of it, which was about these kids who find these weird. They find that they're called like funnels or like cones, and they're these weird shapes, which you're seeing here. And they start building animals out of them, and the animals start coming to life, and it's this. It feels almost akin to like the monolith in 2001, where it's this thing that is so like you're like, this is special, but I don't understand it. Like this is an alien object, and these little kids find these funny little when kids find old boards at a construction site, and they're like, we'll build a spaceship in the woods. It's like that, but they start building robot animals, and it just gets. And this is all footage that he made, I think, to just promo the movie and kind of prototype it, and he just dropped that to be like, hey. The rest of the trailer is basically cut together from scenes from existing movies, like, a lot of Spielberg, a lot of Harry Potter, or I guess like 2 or 3 shots of Harry Potter, but like other films that kind of have a similar tone. But it's so weird to see these basically concept shots. Like all this stuff here is could have been in a movie, and it's not hard to see why this didn't get off the ground because it's not really like an accessible movie. Like reading the story about it, there's stuff that you're like, this is interesting, this is familiar, but it's not remotely, it's not marketable. Like it's not like it's a big budget indie movie.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the kind of thing that like best case scenario, they would have like either whittled it down and make something that's accessible for all ages, or they make something obtuse and weird and sci-fi that gets like, weird Figma collectibles that dorks like you and I would be like, oh, I got that cardboard horse. But for the average moviegoer, like this is definitely, it was very pricey for something that didn't really have like a truly cohesive vision to the average common person. I feel like the way he had pitched this movie, I think it would have made sense to him, but I think like ultimately you have to make something that's consumable to the common man.
Yeah, I mean,
and
again, like never say never. Like it's entirely possible we see this get picked up by Amazon or HBO Max or Netflix or somebody. It's just cool to see like concept footage like this because they obviously spent a bunch of money bringing those ideas to life, and usually it's a sketch or two, but I don't know. There was footage floating around for a minute of the Akira, like the live action Akira movie that never got made. Not like actual live action, but like here's a CGI shot of a motorcycle. Here's what it could look like, which fascinates me. I love that. I love the almost of things. And I guess it's that part of me that like I am really morbidly curious to see what the Snyder cut looks like. I want to see what's in there, what happens. The William Gibson Alien 3 movie that never happened is fascinating because it was this spec screenplay that they hired William Gibson of Neuromancer and Cyberpunk fame to write in I think 1987, 88, and he threw it together. It was his first screenplay, and it's out there on the internet if you want to read it. And obviously it was not the Alien 3 we got. It was a very different story, but it was just kind of the producers wanted something to sort of throw around or to be like, oh, we need somebody to, get ideas from. And then more recently that got turned into a full on radio drama with the original cast of Aliens jumping in there. They got Lance Henriksen and Michael Biehn to just do VO for it. They made it into a graphic novel. They basically did everything but make the movie of William Gibson's Alien 3. So the fact that there are like, ideas for movies out there doesn't necessarily mean they can't exist. They just don't always, materialize as movies.
Yeah, I'm totally into that. And honestly, I'll take something like that, even in, radio drama, comic book, even if it's like an animated show, like anything to get that vision out there. And that's coming from someone like you and I have talked about this extensively, but we're fairly staunch defenders of the like actual theatrical version of Alien 3, which is on HBO Max right now. In case you want to give that one a second chance, I think there's some really cool stuff in that movie. But I would totally also watch on alternate version of it. I don't know if I would campaign extensively on social media for a decade for
Have
it.
you
But
have you seen the assembly cut?
No. Oh, maybe I
So
have
it's not
actually.
it's not a director's cut because Fincher didn't want to have anything to do with it. That was actually his first movie, which is like crazy to think about. He'd been doing like Madonna videos and car commercials and shit, and was just like, they were like, "Hey, do you want to do Alien?" He's like, "I'll do Alien. Alien is interesting." And then they didn't have the script ready when he was starting shooting, and he was like, well, "This is gonna be a mess." And so the assembly cut is a recut of that movie using his footage based on his notes and based on like what they thought he would have wanted, but he had no like actual oversight on tweaking it and putting it back together. So who knows? Which is actually, that's akin to what the director's cut of Blade Runner was. That was the studio making a recut of Blade Runner based on what they thought that Ridley Scott wanted, but he didn't actually get involved. So is it really the director's cut?
Yeah, there's always a weird debate on which version of that is the best.
Anyway, it's time to talk about dolls, otherwise known as action figures if you're in your 30s or, defensive, but whatever. We have some cool ones right here. I have, this is really just, we have all our dolls at work. We have all our toys are at our desk, but I'm sort of, gradually amassing a bunch of nonsense here. We talked about some of these, but I want to talk today about the Hasbro Black Series Probe Droid, which just came out for the 40th anniversary of Empire Strikes Back. The Probe Droid is such an incredibly cool thing in Star Wars that doesn't get nearly enough love, because it just shows up and it goes around, it like floats around, it goes babada 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 system, and then they shoot it and it blows itself up. Like they don't even, in the words of Han, he didn't even hit it that hard.
Yeah,
but this is
what's great about he went on to become, the Probe Droid went on to become like an awesome video game villain, like because it's such a fantastic design.
Yeah, I keep saying he. No, it's in everything. I remember seeing it in Dark Forces, and it's weirdly small. Like it's like they made really small models of it, and I just remember being like, yeah, that's how big they should be. And then in the movie, you don't really get a good sense of scale. And then when the toy came out, I was like, that can't be right. But like, I guess this is the right scale for it. It's supposed to be pretty large.
Yeah, so we've been talking about the Black Series Star Wars action figures for a couple of years now. Hopefully, you can get a good shot of this one. And they've done very few sort of figures outside of the figure, like 6-inch, like sort of man-shaped body thing. They've done Tauntauns, they've done Wampas, they've done speeder bikes and stuff like that. But in terms of doing like droids, like at least one of this size, this is kind of a special one. So this is $29.99, available at pretty much all retailers, wherever you can get it. I got mine on Amazon, which is cool. It comes with a sort of a Hoth snow-shaped base. And we've gotten Probe Droid toys in the past. Max, you and I have, I believe is the Power of the Force one we have at our desk at work?
Yeah, that was actually, it's interesting to think about that, because that was also too big to be released in the main line. That was one that they released in, I want to say 1997 with the Power of the Force 2 Deluxe line. And the rest of the Deluxe line was more or less like, it's too small to be a vehicle and it's too big to be an action figure. So they don't really know how to handle it. And so it was in this weird line with like, Han Solo with smuggler jetpack, or like Luke Skywalker with like pop out. It was like very toyish nonsense. And then and this guy, and I remember the 90s one, like his head would pop up and there was a missile inside that would launch, which was cool as hell. But then it had a second like action feature where you'd hit like a tab on him and his head would pop off. That was a good ass toy. So hell yeah, I bought the new one.
Super cool.
Because it's
and the new one comes with a stand, which is awesome. The other thing I like about this is like, if you look at the Tauntaun and the Wampa they've done, they basically made those like $40, $50 2-packs, because I felt the need to justify packing them in with a figure. And I think nowadays they're just like, hey, if you're on board, you're on board. So here's a Probe Droid, which I love. Like, it wasn't a
ladies
Probe
high-heeled shoe. I love this.
I know, right?
Ooh,
like,
ooh.
Yeah, the articulation is awesome. There's like, what is it, 5 different legs that move and articulate. The head moves. There's antenna on top that are spring loaded that I really, really dig. Yeah, super cool toy. I hope they keep making stuff like this. I just rewatched The Empire Strikes Back with the Clone Wars' Sam Witwer and Raul Coley, who's going to be on the next season of Haunting of Hill House. Good pals of ours, good friends, both of which have been on this show before. So you can go check that out. We did an entire commentary of that movie, and I was struck like immediately. I love that movie, but I always forget how awesome just the first 15 minutes are. How you like the first things you see are a probe droid and a tauntaun, basically, when you get to Hoth. And like those are two of my favorite designs in Star Wars. And I don't really give Empire Strikes Back a ton of credit for having a bunch of like, it doesn't really have a ton of like monsters and puppets and dive bars or anything like that.
I mean, it
probe
doesn't.
droid and tauntaun make up for it.
It's got the probe droid, the tauntaun, the wampa, then the bounty hunters, and then like there's the space slug and the Minoc and the Ugnaughts.
Yep,
and that's it. That's all of it.
Yeah, that's pretty much all of it.
It's weird because like that was like Lucas was making a lot of money from toys at that point, but I feel like it hadn't really fully clicked and hit fever pitch. Like obviously, Star Wars was revolutionary because it was like, oh, you can sell action figures for a movie after it first comes out and be like keep people in that loop. Yeah, I think it was Jedi that was really like, all right, let's dig deep on this.
Which is interesting because if you look at A New Hope, they sold action figures based on everything. I mean, there was a toy for Hammerhead and just a bunch of Cantina monsters and Ponda Baba and the Snaggletooth, all those guys. But the big gamble in Empire Strikes Back, the biggest gamble in Empire Strikes Back, aside from let's end this movie on a sour note and let's front load this movie with the space battle at the beginning, but that's not actually in space, it's on land, and then not have like a big ship battle at all for the rest of the movie, really, was taking what was essentially 30-something minutes of the movie and basing it on a mystical pot frog who who taught Luke Skywalker lessons. And Lucas is he's been very public in the past about like, well, this is a gamble, like, because that whole thing could have collapsed. Like that movie could have been that lived and died on Mark Hamill's conversations with Frank Oz's Yoda, and Yoda became one of the most iconic characters of all time. He's synonymous with the franchise.
He took that gamble again with Jar Jar. It's like the same. Yeah. It's the same role of like this, like, oh, here's this character. This like the travelers meet this like weird dude who turns out to be, but Jar Jar was, just he offended everybody and was like, and it was annoying. And so like, and it didn't.
Yeah, I think they took the sort of like eccentric slapstick traits that Yoda definitely embodies when he's crawling around, eating Lara bars and stuff like that, and they cranked him up to 11. But one of the things that George Lucas said about The Empire Strikes Back and Yoda specifically is that you should never find out who his species is. It's always been a mystery. And I think it might be one of the only rules that Star Wars breaks because, as we all know, last year, The Mandalorian came out and we got to see Baby Yoda, a.k.a. the child, for the first time. And that turned into a thing that I have a feeling that show is going to sort of like culminate in reaching a planet of Yodas, and that's going to be mind-blowing. But in the meantime, there's one of them. He's been kept a secret for a very long time, or at least was. One of the best reveals, I would say, in Star Wars history was sort of the first pilot episode of Mandalorian. They pull back the curtain, and you find out that the child, the asset, is a small version of Yoda, a species we'd never really seen before outside of Yaddle, who I don't like to talk about at all because it just grosses me out. So speaking of toys, because of the pipeline of keeping all of that a secret, they struggled with getting merchandise out at peak of where that show was. And so they resulted in doing a lot of weird stuff, which is taking like weird concept renders and slapping them on mugs and t-shirts. A lot of like really cheap Baby Yoda stuff happened last year. But Hasbro, who makes the Black Series and made the aforementioned Probe Droid, also made a Baby Yoda figure, and they made it in the 6-inch scale. but they didn't specifically detail that as well as they should have when they took pre-orders back in December, when again, fever pitch hype for this thing, and no one actually had it in their hands. And so a lot of people who aren't weird, dorky old toy collectors like you and I, just recently in the last 2 weeks, started getting their Baby Yoda figures delivered, only to find out that they are incredibly,
oh my God, that's so small.
tiny. So this is, let's see if we can autofocus.
Do you have
here.
Do you have a Lego minifig around there anywhere?
Maybe.
I feel like that's a good scale comparison. God, you can't even focus it. It's pull back a little bit.
That's how tiny he is.
Now it's too tiny. Yeah, you can't even get in there to see him. He's so little.
Yeah. So tiny. And so he also comes with like a little kit of accessories, which I had on my desk. I swear to God I did. And there he is. So his accessories are this big, and they contain a
This
small
looks like
frog.
an eyeglass repair kit. I can't tell what that is.
Yeah,
it's just
so it's got a small frog. It's got his little cup that he holds, and he has that tiny little ball that goes on top of the Mandalorian's Razor Crest thruster. It looks like a joystick topper. And so this Baby Yoda is so tiny, his arms fall off. You can't put his hands together because the plastic is too thick. And so this showed up, and it was in this, like, the tiniest Black Series box I've ever seen, even smaller than the ones they ship those porgs in, and even the Jawa. And I was like, okay, so I get it. That's cute. It's $8.99. I wasn't expecting the world here. I'll throw him on my shelf. He's adorable. We'll make a video about him. And then I hopped on Amazon, and I realized that there's a lot of people who were like really, really upset about this. And I would say justifiably, because this was some of the first Baby Yoda merch that was available to pre-order. And so when they read 6-inch scale, I think they all thought 6 inches. And what they got was a toy that's the size of a quarter. And
we've got the Amazon reviews here. I think they've since changed it to say it's a 1.1 inch tall. Like, why even say 0.1? Like, just say 1 inch. Like, it's not. But yeah, so it's got 3.2 out of 5. And the top review is to the point. He's a tech tester. I don't know if Baby Yoda counts as tech really, but yeah, if you buy this knowing you're getting a 1.1 inch figure, you'll be happy. But if you pre-ordered it, not so much. We knew it was going to be small, but definitely not worth what we paid for him. Here's a comparison with the box. That's tiny, man.
I know, right. And so the thing is, like, the accessories are cute. Like, the frog is cute, the one he slurps up, but he can't really do anything with it. It's such a tiny toy. And so I understand that people are disappointed. It is to scale with the rest of the line. That said, if you do love Baby Yoda and you want his merchandise, luckily for you, there's plenty more out there now. There's like weird Build-A-Bears and giant plushies. If you want something that's big, there's also the Sideshow Hot Toys $300 something one, which is like film accurate. Like, you will not get a better Baby Yoda than that.
No, so this is interesting because like scale, like when you describe scale for something like with like a 6-inch action figure, they have to always be like, oh, it's 6-inch scale when talking about a vehicle or whatever. But yeah, with model kits, it's always in scale with whatever that thing is, which is rooted in sort of battleship or train or like real vehicle stuff. It completely goes out the window when you start dealing with fictional vehicles. I have, let's see, like here is a 1/144th scale X-Wing, which is teeny. But if you don't know scale that well, you're like, I don't know how big an X-Wing is normally. I'm not going to do fraction math. That's a pain in the ass. That's annoying. And I feel like there's probably been a lot of weird comical stuff like this with people. You see maybe you see the higher number and you think it's going to be bigger. You don't think too hard about it, but then you get something like I bought. This is, I think, one of the biggest Gundams you can get.
Wow, he's awesome.
I think it's like 1/32nd scale, which in the world of cars is like totally normal. You're just like, it's a little tank or whatever. But this is supposed to be like a 60-foot tall robot, and so they're like, what's 1/30th of 60? Like, it's, I guess, this,
Yeah, there's a lot of people saying basically it looked like a Mighty Max or a Polly Pocket toy. Let's see. Quentin Scorsese, which I love that name, on YouTube says Baby Yoda is a choking hazard. Yeah, well, I think people weren't expecting that. And I like this comment a lot. Matthew Reeves says, "Wow, he should just be included with the Mandalorian figure." That makes perfect sense. They should have just done a 2-pack for $30 or something that had Mando, Baby Yoda, and a bunch of accessories and stuff like that. If you think back to The Force Awakens, where they were completely caught off guard with the idea that they were making toys for that movie, because the Black Series line for that movie was like, frankly, pretty crappy. Like terrible face sculpt.
I think it's the same problem, dude. I think it was the fact that they had to keep stuff under wraps for too long, and the turnaround time was way too quick.
But like the weird thing is that like they never packaged BB-8 as his own like actual toy. Like you could never get a Black Series BB-8. You had to buy him with Rey, and his paint ops were terrible, and he just had this like awful ball joint around his neck that felt like a lug nut. And so like one of the like they dropped the ball so hard with that line early on, but like
well, no, that's the fundamental issue.
Droid.
That's the issue with the 6-inch scale. Like I love what they've done with the Black Series. They've made some really cool stuff, and it's great if you are I don't want to say, casual collector, but like if you're more into posing one or two figures, or you're like the key characters. But like the reason that line was successful in the first place is that you could collect more of them. Like I think there's a fundamental like disconnect between the idea of a collectible needing to be a certain size. If people are fully dedicated to like collecting stuff hardcore, like Hot Toys are 12 to 13 inches tall each, depending on what you're getting, cost hundreds of dollars. You're gonna need like glass cases and like beautiful displays to set them up properly. And then 6-inch figures, you can have like a handful of them up there. But if you've got like a bunch of little ones, like you can store them well, you can like display them easily. It's very simple and straightforward. And if you're a kid and you want to play with toys, it's not that expensive to make a little tiny vehicle with a little tiny man. But like if you're going to make, the second you start making vehicles for 6-inch scale figures, like we've gotten for Black Series Star Wars, we've gotten the biggest one is a TIE Fighter, which is completely absurd. And that's one of the things where
we joked about expensing for the IGN office and basically just putting a piece of glass on top and turning it into a conference room table. A, because it was huge, and B, because it was immediately discounted from like $200 to like $50 because no one was really jumping on that because it's too big. Mm-hmm. It's too big to have at home.
No, that's to tie into that, there's a weird secret where frequently really large like toys wind up being cheaper. I got the 12-inch scale Power of the Force 2 Dewback. I got for something stupidly cheap. It was like, I mean, that was a toy that in the 90s was, I think, like $100, and I got it 2 or 3 years ago for, I want to say 60. Like somebody just wanted to get rid of it. Like it was just taking up space in a store and nobody wanted to buy it. And I was like, I'll take you home, you Dewback. And I opened it up and it smelled like a gasoline fire. It was just wretched.
I remember that.
I probably have lymphoma from just smelling that big lizard. But no, I mean, I think they just announced they're doing.
The office. We only have a decent collection of Dewbacks sitting at the office, actually.
We do. Like we should do a Dewback. How Stella got her Dewbacks. But no, like it's a weird, stupid problem. Like that was what I loved about the G.I. Joe toys as a kid, is that they always had really cool vehicles of like different scales, where you'd have like, like a little jetpack, and then you'd have like, a frickin' battleship. That's cool. And 4-inch Star Wars figures could also do that. But we're never going to see like a 6-inch scale ATST or like our AT-AT. Yeah. Like I think did we get an ATST?
No.
Okay.
We got.
I dreamed that.
That was Black Series was also doing 4-inch scale for a while, and then they switched over. But there was like one of the last things they did was like they did an ATST, and then I think it got immediately discounted too. Grant Larkin on YouTube says, would a 6-inch scale of Max still be taller than Brian? The answer is yes, because if you look at like K2SO, who's one of the tallest toys they've made in this line, and also Snoke, both really tall characters, way taller than Luke Skywalker, Jyn Erso, or anybody who's balder. So yeah,
that's a weird one to think about. Like I feel like that's a funny thing in the Marvel universe, because if you read those old trading cards, they'd always be like, everyone is like over 6 feet except for Wolverine. Like, Wolverine's like 5'4" or whatever, but like everyone is like, height 6'2", 350 pounds, ripped, and it's like, all right, no one's average here. Like everyone is the superhero. It's all totally over. that totally messed up my perceptions of like what normal was as a kid. I'm the same height as Colossus. But I'm, he's in really good shape and can turn into organic steel at command. But like, it's weird to be like, you see like Colossus as being like, you're like, how tall is he? He's like 6'5" or 6 or whatever. And it's like, and then I wind up, I'm like, I'm that tall. That's what is normal? And like, you can't even buy like a regular figure of him. You got to buy like a bunch of different pieces and boxes and piece them together because he's too big.
Dude, I've been watching The Last Dance on ESPN, the Michael Jordan documentary, and it's awesome. I recommend it to everybody. Even if you don't care about basketball, it's phenomenal. But there are parts of that show where they're like kind of like, no pun intended, punching down on basketball players, and they're like, he was only like 6'4" or 6'5", he wasn't like the rest of us. He was, he couldn't do the stuff that we do. And I'm sitting there like a 6 foot tall, specifically 6 foot tall man being like, oh man. Like,
what was it? Like Scottie Pippen was really short.
Yeah. And then he got tall actually. But yeah, we have just a few minutes left.
No, I'm crazy. What am I thinking of? No, Scottie Pippen was 6'8". Who's the little, there was like a little basketball player.
So no, the thing is with Scottie Pippen is that he was really short in high school when he played, and so he got super aggressive and like really quick and fast because he had to do that. And in the same way that like short people develop like a really good way of insulting others.
Muggsy Bogues.
That's a very short man.
Yeah, he's 5'3". That's how tall my wife is. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. That's cool.
Can your wife dunk over you? Because then you guys can make some money.
No, that would be, I don't know, that'd be weird.
Yeah. We have a few minutes left in the show before we leave you for the weekend. And so if you're on YouTube, if you're on Twitch, hit us up with any questions that you might have, any last minute topics, any requests, and we will do our best to get to them. Oh yeah, Spud Webb. People are just
Spud
naming
Webb
basketball
sounds,
players.
Yeah. No, I think Scottie Pippen sounds like that's. I don't mean to be mean about Scottie Pippen, but Scottie Pippen is a short sounding name.
That is a
like
short.
I
short man.
I picture like a small dog, and then what is like Pippen sounds like an English schoolboy. Like you picture two small things next to each other.
Like a hobbit, yeah.
Yeah, like exactly. That's why I think Scottie Pippen is short, because you got small dog and then one of the hobbits, and that's two small things together. But he's 6'8", which is taller than me.
This might be the longest you and I have ever talked about basketball. And is this
the first time we've ever talked about sports, not counting the Mighty Ducks movies?
Yeah, potentially. I think so. I think most of the time we have no idea what we're talking about, and I think that actually carries over to right now as well, because
that's still true. We do not know what we're talking about.
Noelsan95 on Twitch says, what do you think about the Snyder Cut HBO movie? I can't wait to see it. Are you guys excited for it? We touched on that a little bit earlier. My thoughts on it are twofold. I'm gonna retweet what Max said earlier, which is I'm like morbidly curious to see it, because how does something like that exist or get made, and what sort of like old scrap parts are they recycling and redoing versus what are they making that's new? I think there's something fascinating about that from like a filmmaking perspective that I'm interested in. On the flip side, I've been reading my kid a lot of the, like, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie books, and every single one of those books, if you're not a parent, starts with like a kid and a mouse, and the mouse wants a cookie, and you give the mouse a cookie, and then he wants something more after that, and he wants something more after that. Because like if he has a cookie, he needs milk, and if he needs milk, he needs a napkin, and when he has a napkin, he decides to go to the bathroom, but he's in the bathroom, he decides to clean the whole house. And because the house is clean, he throws a party, and because the party came over, the house is messy, and he's tired, so he cleans up the whole house, and he sits down, and he has a glass of milk, and the glass of milk reminds him that he should have a cookie. And that's what the Snyder Cut feels like, because it feels like we gave a mouse a cookie, and now they want 100 more things. We have now set a precedent where if we have opened up this portal where we are creating a pipeline directly to people who want something because specifically they've talked about it ad nauseum repeatedly for the last 5 or so years, then I think we're going to get to a point where now they're already asking for like the Snyder, the Ayers cut of Suicide Squad. So I do think it's a slippery slope, but I'm glad it's getting out there, and I'm hoping that people enjoy it.
I see your mouse cookie comparison, but I feel like the more like accurate thing would be if you were about to give a mouse a cookie and then the mouse left and then a bird swooped in and took the cookie and then ate it unsatisfyingly, and then you were like, I'd like to give another cookie to that mouse because he wasn't here for that first cookie. Let's see how he finishes the cookie. And you don't know how that's going to go. Kind of losing the thread here. But I mean, like, I want to see, I feel like WB mishandled the DCEU from day one. I mean, I think they got Snyder in there to be like, okay, give us a Superman movie. Do for Superman what Christopher Nolan did for Batman. I don't know if Snyder was the best choice for that. I feel like Superman is fundamentally this like, bright and shining, hopeful character, and Snyder is predominantly a dude known for doing sad things in slow motion or like, dark and gritty, action sequences. Like he's a very gritty guy, and I get that there's that demand for, taking this blue shining American dream superhero and giving him sort of a modern reinterpretation, but I don't know if that was exactly what the best choice. But that being said, he was then put in a position to sort of architect the entire DCEU. But I think there was pressure to try to catch up with Marvel and be like, okay, we want to catch up with the Avengers real fast. So like, let's get that done in like 3 movies. Let's get chop, go for it. And like, so we had like the fact that we got a movie where Batman and Superman fight, and it couldn't just be that. It couldn't just be Batman versus Superman, the movie. Like it couldn't be that simple. It had to be Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, featuring Wonder Woman and a brief glimpse at Aquaman, but also setting up Doomsday. And there's going to be a tease of Darkseid. It's like, just let it be one thing. Like, let it be like, I have The Dark Knight Returns here. It's one of the best comics ever written. Good God. It's also like the thing about some of the best comics is they're still intertwined with comic book lore. And there's all these little tiny bits and pieces and little things that it's hard to compartmentalize that into a movie and make that work properly. But I feel like DC was more focused on, building a movie empire and trying to make this like this next big thing than they were with making like one good movie and getting it solid and right. And it's I
completely agree with that. Yeah. I completely agree with that. I think that's like it collapsed under its own weight, and I think that like going back to the cookie metaphor thing again, I think if you went back to the bakery and you said remake those cookies from scratch, and they did, but they used most of the same ingredients that they had the first time they made the cookies, and they weren't really the best thought out ingredients. Like it's like carrot and like gluten-free flour, and like the chocolate chips are just like they're unsweetened or something like that. Like I think like you can make a better cookie than you did the first time. You can add sweeteners and stuff like that. You can make it better. Maybe add peanut butter. Whatever.
What if you gave the baker $30 million to make the cookie that he wanted to the first time, and he's like, "Great news! The cookie is going to be 4 hours long."
But how much of the original cookies does he still have to use to make the cookies, though? That's what I'm saying.
He has to use the same chocolate chips, but if he runs out of chocolate chips, he can't get new chocolate chips because the chocolate chip factory is closed, and the chocolate chips are the most expensive part, even though it's the thing everyone wants. He can try to recreate them with carob, but nobody wants to trifle with carob. No, thank you.
His name's Cyborg, and he still has to wear a shirt for the whole movie because they don't have the budget to draw his robot arms. Ladies and gentlemen, those are our thoughts on the Snyder Cut. Completely unscripted and unplanned, but this is what the show's all about. Thank you so much for joining us this week. As you know, I'm Brian Altano. That's Max Scoville. Next week's going to get absolutely bonkers, just insane. We're going to do our best to bring a show to you, and I think we still will. It might be a little loosey-goosey like this one, but IGN's going live next week with all sorts of crazy stuff. And
well, hey, wait, hold on. A week from today, this time of day, we're going to have an idea of what's coming to PlayStation 5. We're going to have an idea of some brand new video games to get excited about. So that's right. Fun. That's something to look forward to. Be excited about that. Yeah.
Be excited about that. We're doing the Animal Crossing live stream a week from today. Also, we're going to be doing tons of live programming all next week. Max and I have been helping a ton with all that, and so thank you for sticking with us. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and I hope things keep getting a little bit better than they were this week, because this week was garbage, but we got through it. We did it. Have a good weekend. Yeah. We love you, and thanks for watching Up at Noon from the bottom of our weird, dark, black hearts.
Be excellent to each other.